The data is clear. Indiana is experiencing a teacher shortage. Since the issue came to lawmakers' attention this summer, the Department of Education confirmed the Hoosier State has seen more than a 30% drop in licensed first-time teachers. What's still a bit blurry is how policymakers plan to remedy the problem. Rachel Morello from our State Impact Education team reports about the solutions being discussed and why it could take a while to see sustained change.
Nearly everyone involved in education, from the Commissioner for Higher Ed to parents to teaching instructors, has an opinion about why Indiana is seeing fewer people enter and remain in the teaching profession.
Young people are really getting exposed to this message of teaching is no longer a good job. And it is, in fact, still a good job.
Lawmakers have been inundated with data. Members of the General Assembly's Study Committee on Education debated it for hours this week during a marathon meeting. On one hand, the process is a good thing for policymakers. It allows them to study the problem from all angles. But it's more difficult to make real strides in identifying potential fixes when there are so many variables. For State Superintendent Glenda Ritz, when it comes to change, the key word is systematic.
We want to have quality teachers in our classrooms. What does that look like from recruiting efforts to pre-service efforts to mentoring while in the classroom to compensation to working conditions?
And some teachers find the process frustrating. Kokomo teacher Dee Emmons sat through the committee's entire 8-hour meeting. Many of her colleagues had to leave before getting their chance to speak, and Emmons says those voices are critical to include in the conversation.
I thought that they would have been better served the constituents here in Indiana had they found people, or the majority of people, who are actually in K-12.
Yeah, you picked this one.
But there is likely more time to join the discussion. Like the meeting itself, many say the process of filling teaching positions across the state will be a marathon, not a sprint.
So we have to realize that education is not like a switch where you can just turn a button and then all of a sudden everything switches over. But we can continually make incremental shifts that will also help these students.
Angela Lupton is a member of the state's Blue Ribbon Commission, a group of about 50 leading educators from across Indiana that's been meeting over the past month to identify possible strategies. One of those strategies is already at work in Lupton's own community at Butler. It's called tapping, and it allows classroom teachers and other education professionals to identify students or other individuals they think would make good future teaching candidates and pass their information along to state colleges of education. Lupton says it will take some time to see results from a strategy like this, but adds that it is unique because it can be implemented without legislative approval.
Do we need legislative action in order to produce a tapping card? No, that would be a waste of our resources in the legislature. Do we need legislative action on some bigger issues, though, that are happening in terms of teacher evaluation, salaries, those kinds of things? Yes, we need their help in that. We all have the same desired outcomes, I believe, I hope, and we have to figure out who's going to take which pieces of the pie so that it all gets solved.
Lupton meets with fellow members of the Blue Ribbon Commission to begin drafting a legislative agenda on November 16th and again on December 7th. Most of the state's official policymaking groups aim to have recommendations ready for the start of the legislative session in January.
And Rachel joins us on set now to talk more about the timeline and some of the proposed solutions. So Rachel, we heard a few of the suggestions people are tossing around. What are some of those recommendations that people are starting to rally around?
So policymakers are focusing on solutions in two areas: recruitment and retention. As far as recruitment goes, we're hearing a lot of people mention ideas like one that Dean Lupton mentioned at Butler, where top students who might be pursuing other majors or top professionals, even in other fields, are tapped to get a teaching certificate. A few have even mentioned making it easier for instructors who get certified out of state to come teach in Indiana classrooms. We've heard a wider range of suggestions for retention strategies, most involving stronger professional development and mentoring programs, and especially suggestions about improving teacher pay.
And you know, Rachel, we just saw in that story about that reputation that's kind of harmful for being a teacher. And then you start talking, we've been talking a lot about the teacher evaluations and testing. Any tweaks that lawmakers can make in those areas?
Well, to be honest, policymakers haven't said a whole lot about what they can do to change the state's testing schedule, and I think that might have to do with some of the requirements they have to meet on the federal level. But Representative Boehning, Bob Boehning from Indianapolis, did tell me that he thinks there's some misunderstanding around teachers' evaluations. He says those are calculated on a local level. The state only mandates that student test performance is included in some percentage, but they don't designate specifically what percentage that is. So in one district, only 5% of a teacher's evaluation might be based on student test performance, and in another, it might be shorter.
All right, thank you very much, Rachel.
Thanks.